Alright, we're back to Chapter 4, video number 12. In this video we're going to have a look at how to calculate the overtime checker. So, first thing to do is to understand fully what we're trying to develop. So, in this program here, we're calculating how much overtime or gross pay we would have if we had overtime. So normally, in an average work week, we work 40 hours. After 40 hours would be considered overtime. So if I type in 40 times 10, of course that's going to be 400. But if I type in, let's say I worked 50 hours in a particular week, the first 40 are regular, so that would be 400, but the remainder, that 10 extra hours, would be multiplied by time and a half, which would be, in this case, multiplied by $15. So it would be $550, which should be the answer. So all this little program does is just calculate your gross pay, and it factors in if you worked overtime. So if I worked 41 hours, well, I get 400 plus an extra 15, so it'd be $415, for example. So it's a pretty simple little program. So now that we understand the function, the purpose, the logic behind what the program is supposed to do, let's go in and code that. So when I double click this, I create a click event handler for my wage button. Now I've already got all the text here working. So instead of typing out line by line and explain the whole thing, well, I'm going to actually paste it in and then go through the code in a debug type of manner. So this is actually the program right here. Alright, so to get started with this one here, you got to ask yourself, okay, if we follow the DACO model, we need to figure out, what do we need to declare, what are variables, how to assign it, how to do the calculation, and then finally how to output. So this is a very classic DACO type of model program. Now to start, I did a try-catch block because, again, somebody could type in incorrect data here, and if they did, we'd want to have a message that outputted for them. So I'm going to put the try in here, and then I'm going to start off with my declaration. Now this whole section right here is my declare. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to declare my variables. Now I've got a couple different types of variables here. I've got a decimal right here, and the reason I've selected a decimal data type is because we're dealing with financial information, and usually decimal is a great one when we're dealing with financial. Now the other thing you'll notice is that I'm going to keep track of how many hours, how much pay, and then what the total wage, and also overtime. So these two right here are used by the system to calculate wage and the overtime before we output the information. Also, at the same time of declaring the variable, I've also done an assignment statement. I'm also pre-initializing the values to 0 because I'm not sure what's going to be left over in those variables, so I'm initializing the variables to 0. And when you initialize a decimal variable type, you need to put in an M beside it to define that the 0 is going to be a decimal value that you're assigning equal to that decimal variable type. It's just something you have to remember when it comes to decimal. Alright, now the next one down below here is a type of variable. They call this a constant. And the constant means that we're going to assign a fixed value. And 40 is the fixed value in most financial systems of working overtime. Now in some cases, overtime can be 37.5 in hours. This would be in a government situation. So it really depends. So your company might be 37.5, it might be 40. So that can cause a problem. Whenever you create a constant, you need to make sure that that constant doesn't change. So if I gave this program to somebody else, another like a government company, this program would not work. So the way that this is designed only works for companies that have overtime after 40 hours. And I've used all capitals because this is another naming convention for constants. Whenever you see all capitals for the variable, it's considered a constant. That's just one of the naming conventions that they use. And because it's 40, there's no decimals here, I'm going to use an int. But if I was going to do 37.5, of course, I'd probably want to use a decimal data type here, if that was the case. And we could work that out differently. Down below, we know what the rate is. It's 1.5 times. So we'll talk about the assignment in the next video.